Hey friends, my name is Amy and I'm a health coach here at Flip Your Leaf, and today we're going to talk about fructose. Now, fructose is a monosaccharide, which is the M in Fodmap, and you can find it in sweet things. So we're thinking honey, we're thinking fruits, we're thinking agave syrup, we're thinking, high fructose corn syrup. Any of those sweet, sweet, sweet things is where you're going to find fructose. So why is fructose important? Well, it's under the Fodmap umbrella because it's an osmotic molecule, and what that means is that it attracts water into the bowel while it's sitting there. Now, the reason that fructose in particular is a problem for people with IBS is that fructose is absorbed through something called facilitated diffusion. And all that means is that it needs a little bit of help getting from inside the intestine out into the bloodstream. So in the case of facilitated diffusion, we're going to use the sort of imagery of a shuttle bus. So there is a shuttle bus for fructose called the GLUT5 transporter. And it's like a little tiny bus, and it can only fit a few fructose molecules at a time. And so you eat something, it's got a bunch of fructose molecules in it. This GLUT5 transporter is going back and forth, shuttling as many fructose molecules as it can. Now, while the fructose molecules are waiting to get picked up, they're attracting all of this water. They're pulling it into your bowel. And so while they're sitting there, now we're starting to get bloating, we're getting distension, you might have some cramping, you might have abdominal pain, you might even get diarrhea, and it's from this water being pulled and pulled and pulled into the intestine. Now, there are other ways that you're going to find fructose in your diet. There is sucrose, for example, which is table sugar, which is one glucose and one fructose molecule bonded together. You can find fructose in fructans, which are a string of fructose molecules with a glucose molecule on the end. They're also in inulin, which is a ton of fructose molecules with a glucose molecule on the end. So when we're talking about fructose in the low FODMAP diet, what we mean really is this freestyling fructose, this free floating fructose on its own. And we're specifically thinking about this shuttle bus, and because it's so slow. But when we have something like table sugar, for example, where glucose and fructose are found in equal amounts, fructose can actually hitch a ride on a different shuttle bus, and this is the GLUT2 shuttle bus. This is technically for glucose, but through some magic that, science understands, but is a little bit complicated for this YouTube video, what we understand is that when you're eating glucose and fructose together, they can, these fructose molecules can really hitch a ride on this GLUT2 transporter, and that means that fructose is successfully coming out of your digestive tract and it is being absorbed correctly, and so you're not getting this water being pulled into your digestive tract. So one question I get a ton is, if I'm eating something high in fructose, can I then add glucose to the equation so that it can switch from this GLUT5 to this GLUT2 transporter and get absorbed correctly? Now, Monash University looked into this for us, taking glucose drops or having glucose tablets or foods that are high in glucose, and eating them simultaneously with things that are high in fructose, and unfortunately the answer is no. There is some magical science involved where foods that are packaged together. So when we're finding glucose and fructose, combined together all nice in the packaging while we're eating them, those are able to use the GLUT2 transporter. But when we're adding glucose in an attempt to encourage fructose to sort of use a different transporter, that is not effective. And so that is not a solution right now. That might change at a different time as we understand more about how these transporters work, as we understand more about the relationship between glucose and fructose that are sort of pre-packaged together. But for now, that is not an option. So one thing worth noting is that fructose malabsorption can also be dose dependent. So we know people with IBS, for one reason or another, have a very low threshold for fructose. They can only get a certain amount of fructose, through that shuttle bus out into their bloodstream before they start experiencing issues. But if we were to take an IBS body and we were to take another body, a standard person without IBS, and we were to just overload their system with fructose, because facilitated diffusion works so slowly, both people are going to end up with an excess amount of water in their bowels. They're both going to be getting distension. They're both going to be getting bloating and cramping and abdominal pain and maybe even diarrhea. Like, it doesn't matter always if you have IBS or you have, a regular high functioning body, like whatever. if you're ingesting a ton of fructose in one sitting, you may not have a good time. And this is one of the reasons that fructose breath testing has fallen out of favor. And it's because you're sort of overloading that system with fructose. And really all we know is that your body couldn't convey that amount of fructose, that serving of fructose, through the intestinal barrier in the amount of time allotted for the test. That's really all we can tell. We can't really tell where your threshold is for I can move this amount of fructose out of my body and whether that's in a healthy range or not. So that's something to consider if you've ever had a fructose breath test. Now, one final thing before we go, there is a condition called hereditary fructose intolerance. So when we talk about IBS intolerances or sensitivities, we're talking about foods that can't get out of the intestine, right? We're talking about these short chain carbohydrates that get trapped in our intestines because they either, there's a malfunctioning shuttle bus and they're not getting out correctly, or there is a breakdown in how they're sort of being broken apart, like we see in lactose intolerance, where things that need to be broken down in order to fit through the intestine cannot be broken down. There are many reasons that molecules might end up sort of stuck in our intestines and travel down into our guts and get in sort of all sorts of trouble. But when we're talking about this hereditary fructose intolerance, or HFI, this is an issue where fructose is getting out of the intestine just fine, but that person is missing an enzyme in their liver, and this can lead to like a toxic buildup of chemicals. Like, this is really not good, and the sort of solution for this is to avoid all forms of fructose at all cost. Now, this does not apply to you if you have IBS. The reason that I'm telling you is that sometimes people with HFI hang out in the same places that we hang out, and that's because we are actively talking about fructose. We are actively creating recipes and, working through things where we are actively avoiding or managing fructose. And so people with HFI can sometimes find things that work for them as well. But sometimes there are comments left on recipes, or there are discussions happening where people are alerting their community members that, this recipe does contain fructose. It says that it's low Fodmap, but there is fructose in this recipe. And while that might be totally fine for a person with IBS, that could be a green serving for you, that could be something that is within your normal threshold, that would not be okay for somebody with HFI. And so I would encourage you, if you're seeing comments from somebody saying this has fructose, this isn't safe, or like heads up gang, like this is not fructose free, I would like you to be open to the possibility that that message isn't for you, and ask a question. Who posted that? Contact that person and say, is this message for me, or was this message for somebody else? And if it's on my website, I'm happy to go and label that as, hey, this is for the HFI community. If you're a low Fodmap, you are good to go. Answer any questions or any of those things. So just to recap our idea for today, I know that this is a lot for such a tiny molecule. Today we talked about fructose, which is a monosaccharide, which is the M in Fodmap. Now, fructose needs a little bit of help getting out of the intestine, and for one reason or another, people with IBS sometimes struggle to get fructose out of their intestine. And that, combined with, extra pain sensors in our digestive tract, a lower tolerance for pain or a heightened sense of pain, this can be really problematic for us. Having all this water pulled into our gut can cause cramping and bloating, distension, abdominal pain, diarrhea. So one of the goals of the low Fodmap diet is to limit the amount of fructose that we have in our system at one time to sort of keep everything as calm as possible. So that's it for today. If you want more information about Fodmaps, about IBS, about the mechanics of your body, and really how to get that sense of control over your physical being, about running your life the way that you want to, definitely hop into my newsletter. I'm going to pop the link below, totally free to join. You're going to get a ton of bonus content. You get VIP discounts in the Fodmap Formula shop. Like, there is so much fun stuff that happens in this newsletter. I would highly encourage you to join if you want to learn more about your body, about how all of this works. Hang out with me. Again, I'm going to drop the link below, and I would love it if you would join me on this adventure. But before you go, do not forget to subscribe to my channel. You are going to get even more videos on IBS, the Fodmap diet, and really how to feel at home in your body. I'll see you in my next video.